Mr. Williams,
Present.
Mr. Bill Harris, Mr. Crittenden,
Present.
Mr. Jesse,
Present.
Mr. Don Harris.
Present. All right, moving right along. Mr. Williams, would you lead us in a prayer, please?
Let us pray.
Gracious God, our Father, we come unto you, Father.
To this same building on the side of the road,
Thanking you, Father, for
your blessing that you have placed upon
from this county, for each one that is present or not present. Father, go with us now as we handle your business, Father. Father, we pray that the things that we do, the things that we say, will be respectful and a blessing to your name. In Jesus Christ, Lord, we pray. Amen.
Ms. Riccardi, would you lead us in the pledge, please? Play ball. Yeah. All right, I'll start by welcoming everybody that's here today. Thanks for being here. And with that, we would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I so move.
So moved by Mr. Jesse,
Second.
second by Mr. Williams. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, one minor change to the meeting agenda tonight. Due to some time constraints and us needing some certain decisions made by 5 p.m., our deadline, I think you were going to move Davenport and Associates to item B under regular agenda items, right behind Ms. Linda Hodges.
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you very much for
So-
pointing that out.
Right.
So there's a motion. Any other discussion on the motion to approve the consent agenda? If not, roll call, please.
Mr. Bill Harris, Mr. Crittenden,
Aye.
Mr. Jesse,
Aye.
Mr. Williams,
Aye.
Mr. Don Harris.
Aye. Motion's approved. Next item is public comments.
I do not have any. Let me double check. I do not have any public comments. No speaker
Okay.
cards? I don't have any speaker cards
Okay,
at
we
this
do
time.
we do have a speaker. Mr. Jackson, come forward, please. Would you
You were
go?
going to make the comment.
Huh?
Were you going to make the comment about the item that was withdrawn?
I am in a
Okay,
second.
okay.
Uh,
You were going to wait for me.
I was going to wait for you.
Okay, let me do mine then. Okay, the general requirements of speakers, public speakers. No, you're not on the time clock yet. But each speaker are required to give your name and address for the record. Each speaker will be given one opportunity to speak. Comments are to be addressed to the Board of Supervisors, not the audiences. Individuals, speakers representing a group of 4 or more must represent 4 or more individuals. You must stand and acknowledge that you are being represented by the speaker and that they forfeit their time to speak. Group speakers are allowed 12 minutes to make their presentation. Comments from individuals are allowed 3 minutes each.
And the only added comment I'll make, speakers can talk about whatever they want, however they want to talk about it, but the application for Mr. Powell has been withdrawn. You still can speak about it, but it has been withdrawn. With that, Mr. Jackson, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, board members and others. Robert Jackson, Mayor Banner. The Southside Sentinel, May 23rd, 2024, item reads, Middlesex sewer costs double, future of sewer to Deltaville system uncertain. After reading this article, I was not surprised. If only someone at the top of the administration had listened back in 2017 when a manager from HRSD stated that the sewer project would be a losing proposition without subsidies, would not be in this situation that we are in today. perhaps it's time to make a change at the top. The manager from HRSD goes on and say, the estimate cost of this project will increase significantly will increase significant before the project is completed, which has already happened, and now we are nowhere near completed. So now the county has spent over $7 million at Cook's Corner, and this administration is uncertain about the future of the system from Saluda to Deltaville. So what's next? Who is going to be held accountable for this? And how can anyone be that irresponsible? When you only have county officers connected to the system and not one business, this speaks volume. I would just like to have one question answered. Has a survey ever been done to see how many customers or businesses wants to connect to the system? I just hope you are not under the assumption that because you have 700-plus water customers, that you will have 700-plus sewer customers. That probably will never, ever happen. Next, the Southside Sentinel, May 23rd, 2024 article reads, County okays $3.3 million revamp for Sheriff's Office. After reading this article, I was surprised to see that the project is moving forward without having funding. Like others in this county, I was under the impression that the financing for this project was already in place. So now you have hired a company, which is another expense, to find money to renovate the sheriff's office. I find that insane. So the total cost with all the additions is about $4.2 million plus. With the interest rates as high as it is today, good luck with that cost. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson, for your comments. Is there anybody else who would like to speak? All righty. Well, with that, I will close public comments, and we'll move to item 3, constitutional officers. We have a treasurer's report, which you have in your packet, and the Commissioner of Revenue, which is also a report only. Any questions? No questions, no discussion. We will move to item number 4, agency and staff reports, and I'll turn that over to you, Mr. Walker.
I've got one quick item. VDOT is report only, but I want to draw attention in this very voluminous packet the board has in front of them this afternoon to our social services report. In particular, Governor Youngkin presented Rebecca Morgan, our director, with Virginia League of Social Services Executives, a certificate of proclamation which was presented to the staff of Middlesex Social Services. And a picture is in the packet. You'll see Rebecca very happily accepting that from the governor. And, I just can't say enough about our staff at Social Services. They do an outstanding job. They're kind of the unsung heroes of the county because they don't get a lot of attention, but they do a very good job and they get the job done well. And we're being recognized for that. I know Rebecca's on many of the state committees, and whenever you go to any conference, she's one of the speakers for social services there. So we're very lucky to have her and her staff working for us at Social Services. And I just wanted to give particular attention to that, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, it is nice to be recognized as having people that do a really good job, and Middlesex being one, and you're exactly right. At the last VACO conference, she spoke, and it was nice to see that, for sure. She does a great job here. I wish she was here that we could tell her that, but
We'll get her next month.
we'll get her somewhere.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Anything else you have, Mr. Walker?
Well, I think the schools are up, and then we have the Mill Creek dredging design to discuss and hopefully get the an answer for that. Louis and Kurt could not be here today. They were in a meeting, And I'm going to be pitch hitting for that one because Ingrid, our consultant planner, is sick, so she's not going to be joining us either. So I'll do my best to answer any questions y'all have and hopefully forward your decision to the PDC. But the schools are next, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Dr. Sykes, would you like to come forward, and Ms. Murray?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Glad you're here.
Thank you for having us here. So on your, or in your packet, pages 63 through 66, you'll see that there's a lot of items there. I'll give you an overview and happy to answer any specific questions. The first 5 items at the top are additional revenue funds that come in, some just wrapping up the end of the year. The bulk of the next part of what you see continuing down page 63 and all of page 64 is what Ms. Murray has worked on to move things around categorically to meet what we are predicting our FY24, which is the budget we're getting ready to finish, based on the governor's amendments back in December. We're still waiting on a calculation tool to get those specific numbers. We're expecting that to hopefully come out maybe by the end of next week, recognizing that's after this current board meeting. And so this movement in appropriation is related to making sure we've got everything covered to finish FY24. There's a learning acceleration grant you'll see in here. That's a grant that comes from the Virginia Department of Education. That's at the top of page 65. And that is to support a supplemental reading program that we'll use in classrooms next year. After that, it's all school nutrition and finishing out the year there. And just a reminder that school nutrition is self-funded. So I'm happy to answer any specific questions related to these items.
Questions for Dr. Sykes or Ms. Murray? Okay, and we're assuming that this will correspond well with what the governor has approved, although we don't have all of that information yet.
Right. This would be a worst-case scenario, the movement that we've got here. And so once we get that calculation tool, we're expecting that it all works out based on what we've spent so far and are forecasted to spend in the next, 26 days of this month should be fine. I can update you also that we did receive the calculation tool on the FY25 budget. I think the last time I spoke before the Board of Supervisors, we were expecting an additional $750,000 based on the General Assembly's budget, and we got just about all of that. I think we came about $59,000 short. But just looking at how we're going into next year, we're still in the hiring process, and things like having a veteran teacher or staff member with 30 or 30 more years of experience. When we hire teachers with less experience, we have some savings there. So we should be okay looking at FY25 based on how those numbers finally panned out with the governor's budget. So that's a quick update on that one.
So a motion would be in order for FY 2024-18 for approval of what Dr. Sykes has presented here.
So move.
So moved by Mr. Crittenden,
I'll second it.
second by Mr. Jesse. Are there any other discussion? If not, roll call, please.
Mr. Crittenden,
Yes.
Mr. Jesse,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Bill Harris, Mr. Don Harris.
Yes, motion is approved. Before you leave, would you speak briefly on the parking lot how's that coming in your opinion?
Yeah, it's coming along great. Parsley Site Works has done an excellent job. In fact, I think they're ahead of schedule. They were able to get the lot graveled so that we could use it for the last few days of school when we have a high volume of parent and community visitors. And so I think we originally have the end date for it to be finished by the first week in August, and I'm hearing that it'll be finished and paved and lined before that time. So they've done an excellent job on the work there.
Well, it'll certainly be a big addition for us, and the complex and the athletics. I was up there the other night, and there was soccer going on, it was Little League going on, and there was something else going on that, yeah, I mean, you had to almost park in front of the middle school to be able to find a parking spot to come down, so that will take a lot of pressure off of that as well.
Yeah,
When that
definitely.
occurs. So we're looking forward for that.
Yep.
Any other questions to Dr. Seitz? Thank you, ladies.
All right, thank you.
Have a nice day.
You too.
All righty. Okay, it appears that next on the agenda is item D, the Mill Creek dredging project, and I'm going to turn that to whoever, but probably you, Mr. Walker.
I'm going to try.
Okay.
Our PDC staff's not present today. They had prior arrangements for the afternoon. And Ingrid Bauer, our planner that was working with this design, is ill and not able to make it. So I believe Dave has a copy of the PowerPoint they did last time, and then we have information in the packet. If I can get Anne Marie to turn to that, I can kind of walk the board through. I'm going to try to muddle through this today because today is, we're getting down to the last minute on being able to let the PDC know what the board's desires are with this, this boat ramp. A little background information. I think everyone is familiar with Mill Creek Boat Ramp. The property is owned, I believe, by the state of Virginia. The Game and Inland Fisheries owns the boat ramp, and we have a county dock down there. The boat ramp has silted in several times over the last couple of years. It's kind of been a bear to keep open. The state has chosen not to maintain the facility anymore. I think they've waved the white flag at Mother Nature and has decided that may not be the best place for a boat ramp. But we did have a grant through the PDC to do some preliminary design work that could open the boat ramp up and dredge the facility and hopefully make it a little longer lasting between dredges, for lack of a better way of saying it. Give it a little bit of longevity. Option one, you see on the screen now, it's concept one. This seems to be the recommendation from Ingrid. She sent me an email this afternoon, let me know that she wasn't going to be here today. She would lean towards this concept with the reef because she feels like that has better encompasses some of the most recent data and some of the shoreline changes that have developed as a result of Ophelia coming through. And just to kind of finish a little background on this, if the board was to make a decision today on moving forward with the grant, it's my understanding the grant is covering the design work. It does not cover construction work, and we would need the state's permission to do the construction and implement whatever plan is designed. And probably wouldn't be a bad idea if we're going to be maintaining this facility over the long term to acquire the property too. I'm a little reluctant to start taking over state properties and maintaining them. I've said that repeatedly. And it's something the board needs to be very aware of. However, we have a dearth of boat ramps in the county, so this would be one less if it's not opened up. Last couple times, to John Kuntz's credit, he was able to get it opened up with very minimal county support on one of those attempts and volunteers on the other. But it kept silting back in on him, so here we are again. The reason the board needs to make a decision soon on this, maybe tonight, I would go so far, because we don't have another meeting until July 9th, is the amount of time Ingrid would need to get the design and the work completed before the grant expires. So the question before the board this evening is, do you want to proceed with concept one or concept two or none at all? If you want more information, and you want the PDC staff present to give a more robust presentation on this, we could hold a special meeting sometime in June and invite them in and have a work session on the matter. We just let the media know what we're meeting on and what we're going to be discussing. But we're down to some time crunches, Mr. Chairman, so we need to kind of make a decision on it.
Let's make sure we're clear on that.
Yeah.
The amount of money that is already been set aside for the design work under a grant scenario, that expires tomorrow, is that correct?
No, it expires sometime this fall. It will just take a little bit of time to get the design work, it's my understanding.
But we have the money for the design.
We
work,
have the money for the design. That is my understanding at this time.
And that was a response back from Louis as well?
Have not heard back from Louis.
Okay.
They're in a meeting and didn't
Okay.
expect to.
But that's the assumption, that we have the money for the design work.
And what I would suggest is if the board wants to proceed with the design work, make the motion contingent upon the money being available in the grant to complete the design. Something along that line. That way, if if we don't have enough money in the grant, which I believe we do, if we don't have the money present, then they just won't do the design.
And it's not a commitment for construction of the project.
No.
But we do have to give them a little bit of direction on concept 1 or concept 2,
Yes, sir.
correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And just for the public, we've been struggling with this for quite a few years, and we are looking at some other possibilities out there that may change what we're going to do with Mill Creek at a later date, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. How do you want to proceed? Is there a motion to, and my understanding is the design work can be shelved for a later date when we're ready to get more heavily involved with that.
That is my understanding as well. Once the design is complete, if the state doesn't want to move forward with the design, which we've been told they do not, it can be,
Or Middlesex
or the
doesn't
county.
continue on.
That's right. If the county chooses to move forward with the construction, they could. You don't have to do the construction if you choose to do design. That's my understanding.
Well, by that time, when we make that decision, there may be some other options out there for us, as I just spoke about.
Mr. Chair, Matt, how much is the grant money for the design? Do we know?
Dave, do you recall? I want to think it was 100. We could find out, Wayne.
Okay, I was just curious,
Right.
you're making the design, you at least gotta kind of know, even if it's grant money there, is there gonna be enough to cover it? More than likely,
Right.
That's some of the questions.
I'm going from memory of a couple months ago when we had them in to present it, and I don't recall what they said as far as the amount the grant was.
Well, I do know.
Because it's a PDC grant they're doing on our
Right,
behalf.
right, I hadn't told you how much it was gonna be, but I knew something needs to be done down there, because it's filling in, and a lot of the watermen needs that, and citizens to get their boat down there, because not a lot of places to do something like that in the county.
And you could make your motion contingent on the design study being done based on the amount of grant money that is currently we have available for that.
Now, I think Randy was getting ready to say something right now, could we discuss a little more?
I just, my question is, on page 67, we're talking about, these are at least right now, the estimates on the construction. So we're talking about, best case, $847,000 for total cost of construction. And that obviously doesn't guarantee how many times we're gonna have to dredge this thing out in the meantime.
It really does not.
Right.
It doesn't.
Wait. Isn't that 847,000 inclusive of the dredging over the years?
Yeah, over 30 years.
Right, so that 847 includes the expected cost of dredging.
Okay. At current rates, I assume.
The maintenance is 500, and then total cost from construction to 30 years is the 887 for option one with the reef. And maintenance dredging frequency every 4 to 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
And one of the things that I mentioned at the last meeting when this came up, what causes me a little degree of discomfort on this is we don't own the land. We don't maintain the boat ramp. If we move forward with the design and it sets, and maybe the state chooses to do it, well, that's great. If they choose to do it, it hasn't cost the county anything. If we choose to do it, we really need to go into it with our eyes wide open, to the point where I'd probably want to sit down with Game and Land and Fisheries and really get down into details of why they're choosing not to maintain this facility.
Do they own the parking lot and maintain that?
I think VDOT owns the parking lot.
Right.
Yeah.
They lease it. Okay.
Yeah, they have that kind of partnership there, so, it's the board's pleasure. I mean, we got the grant through the PDC, they're doing the work, hasn't cost us anything yet that I'm aware of.
On the concept two, the initial cost of $432,000, is that the total minus the grant that it will cost for the first 5 years? And how much it gonna cost the county?
I would have to double check with Ingrid on that to make sure I answer it correctly. My understanding is that $832,000 is the estimated construction cost.
But I'm going back with the initial cost, and I'm looking at maintenance
And
costs
then
for the
maintenance cost, right?
first 5 years of the cycle.
Right.
So, of the $432 minus the $100,000, if we get it in grant, it'll cost the county $232,000. And 5 years later, it'll cost another approximately $120,000. So if we prove it today to do it, it's approximately, the county cost is gonna be $450,000 for 5 years.
I don't believe we have a cost if we approve the design work. I believe the construction question would be answered at a separate meeting.
So with the grant, we don't have to pay anything?
My understanding is we got a grant to do the design work, just to see what could be done. It doesn't commit us to do it. That's my understanding.
Mine as
Dave,
well.
correct me if you think I'm wrong, because I'm pitch hitting on this one.
Does not include construction.
Does not include construction, I know that. Anybody who chooses to do the construction is going to pay for that themselves, or try to get a grant to help get the construction done.
I got one more question too. It's working on private property too. So now you got another little twist along in this. And if the private property, I know you're working on the design, so you got to start somewhere.
And Marie, can you scroll
that's
down to
one
option
thing.
one?
You got to start from somewhere.
Yeah.
So you got to start on that design, and I guess you got to work these other things out, providing, if everything falls in place.
Yeah, I'm gonna let Emery get that picture centered in, and you're exactly right, Wayne, that's a very good point. Some of this work for, I think both concepts actually have to work on some private property next door to the state's property. I'm told, and from memory, I understand that property owner is willing to work with the PDC on getting the work done, but it is private property, and we'll need that cooperation from that property owner in order to construct this, if you choose to do so later after the design's done.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess whatever works there will also help their beachfront too.
Yeah.
When you do it, so.
In fact, you can see where their, I guess, inlet used to be an inlet, not a pond, but it's filled in over time. So I think some of that work is to reopen that.
I'd just like to say, I've looked at this. I am extremely committed to getting a boat ramp, letting people that come into this county get their boats in the water, but this isn't the answer. My belief, my feeling is I don't think the county needs to put another nickel into this or another day's worth of work into it. I think that I used to live on that road. I know that boat ramp pretty well. And I know that it's going to continue to be a headache. it might be a headache that we don't have to suffer quite as frequently, but it's still going to be a headache. And it is state property, and I think that the money that we would be spending on the construction of this in the future can be put to much better use, trying to find a better place for people to put their boat in the water.
I'm just looking at it right now, if we can get a design, at least you have something set up for the watermen in that area, because I know a lot of them that do carry their boats out there to make a living. And now they're having a hard time to get out there. I think it's a good idea to just see, if the state gonna give you some money to see what the design is gonna be, then I'm thinking, hey, let's take a look at that. If it's not gonna cost us right now, and then decide then, and you may go with partnership with the joining landholders or something, you know, and work something out. But I guess if you don't do nothing, you don't have that first step. So the grant money, well, it's not gonna cost us anything right now. So I'm thinking, let's, in my opinion, let's get the grant money and see what the design, because you gotta have a design. If it don't work, then we're out of nothing. But, you know, I'm thinking by that time, you may get some people that local contractors that can help out, that kind of cleared it out before. And just talking to some other local areas there, so local people in the community may be willing to help out along with this. And that, but you gotta have a design, because, it's been used, and then now it's closing in, and it's been opening and closed in again. And I think we need to kind of reach out to some of those people that are using it a lot, that have to make a living. And that's what I think we gotta look at. So, I guess I would like to, if I can make this motion properly, make a motion to.
Perhaps the county attorney would give some advice on the motion, please?
Well, okay,
You want to give it a shot, and I'll
I'll
help you
give it a
out?
shot, and you can tweak it, all
There you
right?
go.
How about that?
Tag team, tag team.
I would like to make some motion that we let the PDC go forward with the grant money based, and you can take it from there.
Which option do you
An
want?
option, we gotta decide,
Yeah.
which option we want. I'm looking at conception two. One. I'm looking at conception one.
Ingrid recommended
And
number one.
and that's what the PDC recommended.
All right. So the motion is to move forward with the PDC grant funds with concept one on the contingency that the grant funds cover the design cost.
That's my motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jesse, second by Mr. Williams. Any further discussion? If not, roll call, please, Ms. Hamlin.
Mr. Jesse,
Aye.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Crittenden,
No,
Mr. Don Harris.
Aye. Motion approved for the design work only, and any future discussion on continuing the project will take place at a later date.
I'll let Louis and Ingrid know.
Wonderful. Okay, regular agenda items. Linda Hodges, would you come forward?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Chairman Harris, Mr. Williams, Mr. Crittenden, Mr. Jesse, and of course, Mr. Walker. Thank you, as always, for this opportunity to provide some updates about now Middle Peninsula Northern Neck Behavioral Health Agency. For those of you I have not met, I'm Linda Hodges. Is this working okay? Linda Hodges, and I'm the President Executive Director of the Behavioral Health Organization. About 10 days ago, we celebrated 50 years of services to this community. It was a delightful event and a great opportunity to engage with and to thank our community partners and our staff. Let's go back 50 years. In the early 70s, when the CSB was formed, we found that we were one of the last CSBs to be organized. There are now 40 community services boards throughout the state. In 1970, there were 1,700 people living in what was then called the Colony, Petersburg State Colony. That term colony was later changed to a training center. And this is where people who were born with developmental or intellectual disabilities, back then it was known as mental retardation, were often sent to live their entire lives in these training centers. Often, the parents who had a child with a severe developmental disorder were often even encouraged by physicians, family, their loved ones to send their child with these intellectual disabilities to be admitted to the training center. The rationale, parents shouldn't be tasked with having to raise such a child. There were limited, if any, opportunities for education for them, and they would be a burden to the family. By the end of the 70s, there were about 7 training centers throughout the Commonwealth. Today, 50 years later, there is one with 75 beds, and that's in Chesapeake. They live, whenever possible, in their own communities where their family is. They are now able to live fulfilling lives, if not with their family, in services like a supervised residential setting, as we have in Urbana, or a supportive residence, as we have in Middlesex County. There are many activities and programs available so that they do have hope in their lives, like all of us want hope. 50 years ago, if you were diagnosed with the most severe mental illness, that of schizophrenia, it's a disorder that surfaces most often in one's late teens or early 20s, you would have been told that your life was over as you knew it. Just when you were getting started in your life, you were told to give up your hopes and dreams of an education, a family, of children. You were told you can't manage stress in your life. And it was really critical to do what the doctor said and adhere to your medication regimen. Now, what we refer to as medication regimen for these what we call now first generations of antipsychotics, over time, taking these medications would bring on side effects such as tremors, most noticeably in your hands, a tick in your mouth, a dry mouth, or having a gait that you shuffle if you took these for too many years. Most often than not, these individuals were written out of a meaningful life experience. Now, when I began at the CSB in the 1980s, and I was doing discharge planning at Eastern State, I met a gentleman who was in his 60s. He was admitted when he was 8. He never left Eastern State Hospital. Today, individuals diagnosed with schizophrenia can recover. We know that. They have opportunities to live a full life. And as one person said, with a job, a car, and a date on Friday night, like we all want. I even recently heard about a week and a half ago that a woman diagnosed with schizophrenia was eventually able to return to school, and she obtained a degree in molecular biology. This is not about intelligence. Today, because of the array of services in our community, we, the community, and I mean collectively the community, are able to offer supports to all individuals, and we now give them hope to live as independently as possible. Our psychosocial program, Charter House, now located in Tappahannock, is one of the most progressive, if not the most progressive in the Commonwealth, provides services to individuals of serious mental disorder. Looking back, this change is nothing short of monumental. How far we have come. And I'm here today, in part, to extend my thanks to you, the Middlesex Board of Supervisors, for partnering with us for 50 years. In the 70s, we were named Middle Peninsula Northern Neck Mental Health and Mental Retardation Services. That later changed to Community Services Board. And as you are aware, we now have changed our name to Behavioral Health. I also thank you for your support of this name change. And I would like to show a short video, it's only about 3 minutes, of about some of the things that we are looking forward to and we've done over the last 10 years and as we look forward to the future. Yes, thank you. serves individuals who are diagnosed with a mental health issue, a substance use diagnosis, or intellectual developmental disability.
We have in particular 60 services that we offer: case management, crisis stabilization, outpatient, intensive in-home, emergency services. Basically, we exist to be a safety net for those who are struggling with behavioral health.
MPN and Community Services Board really didn't define what we did or who we provided services for. Behavioral health really does speak to what our focus is. It is my hope by changing the name that will less stigmatize those individuals who might have a mental illness, a substance abuse challenge, or intellectual disability.
The greatest thing that we provide is our presence. We're here, we're passionate, we're dedicated, and we're here to serve our communities in any way possible.
One of the greatest opportunities that the Middle has is its staff that are compassionate, that are knowledgeable, and that are committed to the service area where they work.
The reality is that our staff, they live in these counties. So they're not only providing a service based off of, their passions on their particular disciplines, but they are providing services to their community members, their neighbors, their teachers, their small business owners. When you live amongst your population of folks that you serve, you really truly bring about a different layer that is often not seen in other spaces.
Things are changing. As a whole, we're looking at different ways to approach treatment.
We're always thinking about where can services be placed to make sure that we are able to serve all facets of our 10-county community.
The opportunities are endless, and I think we're gonna, lean into that and go forth. We have an amazing leadership team and amazing staff members who do work tirelessly. They work tirelessly to provide these services and get professional development in order to provide these services in the best way that we can.
Thank you. I'm sorry, the sound wasn't better. With this, let me just point out, you may have seen at the very beginning the puzzles that they showed. That is an individual who lives in one of our supervised homes for intellectually disabled people. She puts together puzzles, and up to 1,000 pieces. So we all have strengths. Even though we might have some challenges, we all have our strengths. As you are aware, our IDD program is housed in Urbana. The staff there is preparing to add a day program. We used to have a day program in Urbana. We ended that and we're resurrecting it again. And it's been closed for about 10 years. So we want to provide services to individuals who don't really care to go the private day programs, or the private programs don't want them. So we are starting small. We're going to be starting again at our administrative building. Also, this month we are going to have a prom for the individuals who have an intellectual disability. For those individuals, as you probably can well imagine, people who in high school who have intellectual or developmental disability aren't usually seen at the proms, especially 40 years ago. So we're looking forward. The theme is going to be Hollywood, Walk of Fame. I also want to highlight that the Best of Virginia, that we were selected this year as #1 in counseling services on the eastern region of Virginia. So it's through Virginia Beach. Last year we were #3, but this year we were selected as #1, which is an exciting opportunity for us. So lastly, and probably the most important piece here, is I'm going to be retiring from this position in June. And I just need to say I've been very fortunate to serve in this position. And this organization makes a difference in the lives of so very many people, some of whom you might be aware of, many probably you are not aware. So I have appreciated the support of this board for the last 4 years. But I also want to introduce Melissa DeVault, and she will be the next executive director. We're piggybacking this month. And she's already worked in the CSB system, not ours, but another. And so she's very familiar with their programs and services and strengths and challenges. So I just wanted to make sure that you have a chance to meet Melissa before I leave. Any questions?
No, but I'll give a comment.
Certainly.
So, refresh my memory, you've been with the program how long?
Well, I was with it 17 years, and then as I told Chuck Walsh, I took a sabbatical for 10
Right.
and worked in the schools, and then I came back in like 2013. And so I've been here 25 years total,
Quite a while.
quite a while. And actually, I need to say, I probably shouldn't say this publicly, I was working at Matthews Social Services when the CSB was formed. So
Okay.
that speaks to how old I really am.
Can you
Well-
clarify Melissa's last name?
DeVault.
DeVault. Thank you.
Well, Linda, we've been very fortunate to have you where you've been for 25 years. We appreciate everything that you've done. You certainly make our county better.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for your support over all these years. And we wish you the best.
Thank you.
We'll still be just a phone call away if we need you, correct?
Absolutely. After the month of July, I'm going to kind of get downtime in July, but after that, I live in this community.
Wonderful.
So.
Well, thank you
I'm
for-
available to be an assistance in any way I can, or to Melissa in any way I can.
Thank you for all that you've done for Middlesex County and others. And Melissa, we're glad to have you on board and look forward to seeing you and hearing from you.
Me as well.
All right.
Thank you all very much.
Y'all have a great
rest of the
day. Thank you. Okay, moving right along. Davenport, you're on the hot seat.
So, Mr. Chairman, it's my pleasure to introduce again to you R.T. Taylor and Jesse Bausch with Sands Anderson. R.T.'s with Davenport. I think R.T.'s going to kick it off, and Jesse's there for legal support if necessary, and bond counsel.
Good
Take it away,
afternoon.
R.T. Thank
Good
you.
afternoon.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members of the board. You have our presentation in your agenda package that we sent to staff last week or so. Everything that's reflected in there, as you've probably read through, we got the bank bids back May 16th. We also ran and compared to a VRA summer pool pricing at that time. So the numbers are 2 weeks old. However, several of the banks, or most of the banks, fixed their rates and said, we'll hold these firm until we plan to close on the loan. So a lot of those rates stayed the same. I'd point out that VRA does not price its bonds until July 23rd, so that interest rate won't be fixed until July 23rd. JP Morgan also gave us an indicative rate in their proposal process, and that refreshes almost on a daily basis. So we do have a little bit in the way of an update to supplement the materials we're going to look through, but I will say that the framework that you've got in your packet remains the same, no big changes, and the relationship between VRA pricing versus the banks remains roughly the same. So we're going to walk through the package as presented in your agenda package. Couple highlights real quickly for key decisions to be made today. Number one, what we would like to do today for meeting certain deadlines, staying on track with the financing is determine, number one, whether we want to proceed with a VRA financing or proceed with one of the bank alternatives. Okay, so that's sort of decision point number one. Decision point number two is how long do we want to fix the financing for? We've got options in here from 15 years all the way out to 30, and we can talk through those options as it will be helpful in making the second key decision today. Okay, does that all sound fair? Okay. So I'm going to flip to page, it's actually printed page 2, bottom right-hand corner of the page numbers. Looks like it's a different number in your mini-page packet. 96, is that right? 96? Okay. So again, we dual-tracked, and what we mean by dual-tracked is we said we want to make sure we get the lowest financing cost available to the county, right? So we went to the state pool program, made application in conjunction with county staff, and we got that in the door early May to VRA. We also went out to the banks and asked for them to submit a proposal on a date and time certain. We got those bids back from the bank on May 16th, and by virtue of our underwriting desk that trades bonds daily in the markets, we're able to estimate pretty well what a VRA pricing would be at the same time as the banks. Again, VRA will not price the bonds until July 23rd, so we have a good estimate in here, but it's not final. The bank bids that we received came from Capital One, Chesapeake Bank, JP Morgan Chase, Truist Bank, and Webster Bank. So we had a good showing. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 banks. Page 3. This is a high-level summary. Of course, every bank has a different structure to their proposal. They have different terms and conditions. So what we try to do is to boil it down into the main key terms and conditions that we would focus on to make sure things are as affordable to the county as well as flexible for the county, okay? So let me just go through this real quickly on the rates, and I'll highlight a few things and then step you through sort of the, call it the no call, where you can't prepay it and when you can prepay it, and just stack them up for you real quickly, okay? So as it relates to a 15-year option, JP Morgan was the low bid proposer. They provided the lowest interest rates for the 15-year options, and they gave us a couple options. And again, these are indicative rates. They've bumped up a little bit by about 10 basis points over the past couple weeks, okay? But we're going to get to that in a minute. What you see there as BQ or NBQ, so some banks can be more aggressive if you can treat the loan as a bank-qualified loan, okay? Some banks can differentiate between bank-qualified and non-bank qualified, others cannot. So JP Morgan did, and within those, they said, well, if you pay this same rate over the 15 years, you can't prepay it, and that's the lowest rate. It costs a little bit more if you want to buy the flexibility to be able to prepay it after, call it 10 years, okay? So JP Morgan on a bank qualified basis gave us that 3.95% for 15 years, and we can prepay it after 10 years, okay? The next cover bid, as we would say, the next lowest would be Webster Bank, who gave us the 443, and they don't differentiate. It can be bank qualified or non-bank qualified. But they do provide us flexibility to prepaid in 5 years versus 10. Okay? So that's an important nuance. But in all of these options, all the banks gave us some level of flexibility with prepayment, whether it's 5 to 10 years or somewhere in between. Then as it relates to the 20-year options, Capital One and Truist Bank provided the lowest interest rates from the banks for a 20-year fixed rate of 483 or 487 respectively. And again, they want a no-call period, Capital One for about 10 years, and Webster again, Truist again, they would be around 8-year call. So you can't prepay Truist for the first 8 years, okay? So that's just to give you sort of how they fell out, and when we compare them to VRA here shortly, give you some perspective or basis from which we're talking from. So we don't have to compare all the banks that don't make sense necessarily. So I'm going to flip to page 4. And this is the shortest term that we were asked to consider through the RFP process. Obviously, a shorter term means higher annual payments on your budget. So just looking here real quickly, column B, the VRA summer pool will close on or about August 7th. Again, they'll lock their rates in on July 23rd or thereabouts. That's when your rate will be fixed and known. If it's amortized over 15 years, your interest rate, your true interest cost would be roughly 3.396%. If you go across on line 8, comparing that tick, as we call it, VRA is 3.396. JP Morgan at the time was 4.07. So you can see there's quite a difference between VRA and the lowest bidding bank. The upshot of this is that VRA provides the lowest cost of financing in all these scenarios. But what does that mean if they don't lock their rate until July 23rd? So let's scroll to the bottom if we could, Anne-Marie, in the blue here. So VRA is our base case. That's our corner to plumb from, if you will. So that's the lowest cost provider based on 15 years. Between now and July 23rd, VRA's interest rate would have to shoot up by roughly 58 basis points. That's a little over 0.5%. That's what is in blue right there under the first JP Morgan. Now keep in mind that JP Morgan bid is bank qualified. So if it qualifies for bank qualification, it would still be roughly close to, call it 60 basis points higher than what VRA is estimated to be in the current market. Similarly, if you scroll to the next column, if you are unable to do it bank qualified, it would be 70 basis points higher if you went JP Morgan. And then for Webster Bank, roughly 100 basis points or 1 whole percentage. Now, some of these have notched down a little bit. As of yesterday close, we got the updated JP Morgan bid, and we got an estimated current market scale for VRA. That 58 becomes roughly 40 basis points. That 70 basis points becomes 50 basis points. And then the Webster Bank would be roughly 70 basis points. So again, VRA is the lowest cost provider in this 15-year amortization period. And if rates go up 50 basis points roughly or more, then VRA would break even to what the banks have already provided us. So there's quite a disparity still. The market can bounce around as it's been doing over the past several weeks. But again, I think all indications are that rates eventually are going to, well, they're flat, but bouncing around daily. The indications are, the language, the verbiage from the Fed is that we're going to bring them down. It's just going to be at a, call it a slow or measured pace until the mixed data starts to align better. Any questions on how this is set up? Okay. So the other scenarios are going to follow suit. We showed it on the 20-year basis on the next page, and our two low providers from the banks, again, are Capital One and Truist Bank. So VRA, obviously, we're starting in column B with VRA because it's the lowest financing cost option. Capital One is roughly $500,000 more in debt service over the life of the loan if you look down at line 48 in the green. Sorry, I was looking at the updated version. Still $500,000 to $600,000 higher if we went with the bank option. And then for Webster, again, similarly, it'd be quite a difference all in over the term of the debt to pay back. The interest expense is higher. And at VRA, if the market moves 100 basis points or better over the next several weeks until they price their bonds on July 23rd, it would take about roughly another 0.1% to economically break even with one of the banks. So again, VRA is the lowest cost provider. VRA, the way their bonds are structured, as it's traditionally done in the bond markets, they sell their bonds out in the public markets. The investors that are buying those bonds expect to get their return that they plan for over that first 10-year period at a minimum. So there's a 10-year no-call provision, basically, for VRA as well, as we've shown and discussed through the bank. So everybody's got some kind of limit on the front end of when you can prepay. But that 10-year no-call measures up well with the JP Morgans, the Truist, et cetera, and Capital One. So I think I've talked through the comparison between VRA and banks thus far. And I'd like to stop there because that's highlight or decision point number one, is whether we want to proceed with VRA. Over the next couple weeks, things will evolve on the interest rate markets. They'll be up, they'll be down. They'll land somewhere hopefully in between that and the break-even points.
And Mr. Chairman, I would just add staff's recommendation to what RT just presented. Given the choice between the two, we always like to try to get our local banks involved in financing, especially for stuff in the county. But given what we've seen, VRA would be our recommendation or path. And then the next decision the board would have is which term to select with VRA.
Okay. Do you want me to go on, or do you want to have the VRA versus banks discussion right now?
Let me see the 20 and 15, the difference.
Say again?
20 years and 15, I'm gonna see the difference in total amount you gotta pay back.
Okay, well then, let's
On the
flip, let's flip the page then. Flip down to the next page, it's page 5 in my materials. Or excuse me, page 6 in my materials. Okay. So Mr. Williams, right here on this page, sticking with the VRA for example, okay? The banks only give us bids from 15 years to 20 years. A lot of them won't stretch beyond 20 years. That's sort of the upper limit. Fewer and fewer banks are going even 20 years, okay? So we're going to look at VRA, which again, in all these scenarios, VRA is the lowest cost provider, okay? And so if you look at the bottom of page 6, okay, if we select the 15-year term, our annual payment would be roughly $355,000, $360,000 a year, okay? And over the 15-year period, you would pay roughly $5.5 million, okay? So again, that's 15 years. And keep in mind that after year 10, we can prepay it, okay? Moving to the right, under column C, the 20-year, your payment would be $60,000 less each year, so right around $300,000 a year, and your total debt service would be $6 million. So roughly,
It's $60,000 cheaper, not cheaper. It's $60,000 cheaper to go 20 years as we were looking at a payment.
said another way, you'd free up $60,000 in your budget.
Something else for it.
Yes, sir, that's correct. And we're going to talk through a little bit of why we might want to consider, there are a couple variables why we might want to stretch this out and still get the lower cost, but spread it over maybe 25 or 30 years so we can save that much more in our budget, either squirrel it away or use it as we need it over the years coming ahead, because we know.
Basically talking about some type of investment with the $60,000 and $50.
Yes, sir, you got it. That's right. And just to report back to y'all too, the current rates that we can either earn with our cash in pocket, we would put that maybe in the state pool program called the Local Government Investment Pool that's run by the state's Treasury Board. That's earning roughly 5.4% today. Similarly, when we go to borrow monies, we're going to put it in another state program called SNAP, which is specifically to borrowed proceeds, bond proceeds, because they track statistics that we need to keep track of over the next 2 or 3 years as we spend down those monies. That's also earning roughly 5.4%. So we're going to get some interest earnings. When we borrow these monies, we're also going to get interest earnings while it's sitting there and before we start drawing down or as we're drawing it down. So we can use that interest earnings either toward project or toward paying off the debt service. Does that make sense? Okay. So let me step through the next two columns. 25 years, you would be roughly $260,000 a year, so $100,000 less than the 15-year option. Obviously, that adds more expense over time, but we have the option in all these scenarios to pay it off in year 10. So if we're squirreling away dollars, or we have a big drop in 2028, 2029, where our existing debt starts to fall off, we free up about $1 million starting then. We could put that money aside and be ready to pay off the loan after 10 years. And then in the last column, the 30-year would be roughly $240,000, $245,000 a year in annual debt service. So you're freeing up increments of $50,000 or $60,000 depending on the term each year. Does that answer your question? Okay. And I think it's always interesting, you know, one thing that Anne Marie in particular brought up during our discussions with this was, you know, you try to match the repayment of an asset to the useful life. And this building being renovated would be for the sheriff's office, and that building would be utilized over the next 20, 25, 30 years, probably 25 or 30. And so the matching principle, going back to auditing my days with Ernst & Young, you always adhere to the matching principle, matching revenues and expenditures in the period in which they're recognized. So in this particular case, thinking about trying to enhance each year's budget as opposed to sort of hamstringing yourself and having to make a higher payment, you could start off with the lower payment at 25, 30 years, and then after 10 years, redecide, okay, we have the ability to prepay it, we've got some dollars squirreled away, and then figure out at that time, do we have new projects to do, and they might be the market might be at higher interest rates at that point, so you might want to use those dollars you've saved up toward the new project to downsize and borrow less, or if rates are much lower than today, you could prepay this. So that analysis is for another time until we get there and know what rates are going to do. But right now, let me flip to the next page, or next two pages rather, give you some kind of perspective on where we are with respect to today's rates. So this 20 bond index is something that is tracked through Bloomberg. The markets look at it as an indicator of what, call it the top rated. It's a package or compilation of 20 different bonds that they track over time. And over the years, you can see back in the 80s, we're up at upwards of 14%. Over the past several years, we've gotten down below, call it 6%. And right now, on average, if you look on the left-hand side, our current 20 bond year rate is 3.93%. And that should sound pretty similar to the VRA number I gave you earlier. The 20-year amortization in particular is at 3.9%. So that's really close. It's not, the 20 is not necessarily based off of the term. I'm just letting you know that's coincidental. But our current rate for the 20 bond index is 3.93. Current rate for VRA is roughly 4%. So we're right in the ballpark. The average has been upwards of 5.5%. The minimum, obviously, we're not at historical lows, but we're still in the historically favorable range at 4%. The lowest it's ever been is 2%, which who knows if we'll ever see that again. But it's been as high as 13+%. Let me flip to the next page a little bit more. The MMD, this is what the bond markets generally benchmark their daily pricing when they're selling bonds in the public markets. This MMD curve is what they price that off of. That's the generally accepted curve that's used to price bonds on a daily basis. You can see over the past year on the left-hand side, it's averaged roughly 3.5, 3.6%. It's been as high as almost 6% since 2000, and we're roughly at the 3.5 mark right now. Okay, and again, that's the same market and same relationship that we've been talking about on these VRA numbers. That's what this is based off of. So we've had a little bit of volatility during the months of September, October, November over the past year. And you can see, though, that on the right-hand side, we've come back down to roughly the average level. 3.47 is where we are currently. The 18-month average is 3.4. So I think the upshot of all these interest rate graphs, the upshot is we're in still a good, historically favorable market. We're not at all-time lows, but we're not at highs. It's just a little bit volatile now until we figure out what the Fed's going to do. So bringing it back to the previous page we were on, the different terms on page 6, 15 through 30. I think we kicked the tires on this, but I want to make sure I get some feedback and see what y'all's thoughts are. I think 25 or 30 years would make sense. We still have that flexibility to have the lower payment and then figure out in year 10, do we want to prepay it with the monies we've got saved? And really, you would measure, I guess, your interest expense over those first 10-year period instead of the entirety of the loan if you were going to put them all on apples-to-apples basis.
And, Mr. Chairman, I have a recommendation on that as well, but I'll wait till your discussion, so.
And this rate is fixed.
So right now, the VRA rates are not fixed. They will be fixed on July 23rd.
And whatever rate we get at that particular time, it'll be for the whole period of it.
You got it. Yes, sir.
And most of your stuff that you're basing it on is our ability to invest over a longer period of time. Other words, I'm saying, if I got a $200 payment and I decide to take a $100 payment, so I got $100 to invest. So you see that sounds real good. I think the last time that you oversee a met was 2 years ago. When we had a right nice, money in the building fund, and we weren't investing anything. So all of a sudden, if we decide to spend what we're talking about to invest, then it's much sense that it makes you take the long term on, because the numbers say, hey, that's the way to go. And I'm saying, and just how I see it, you invest and you pay off, and that's how I see it. I'm not looking at a big picture saying, you take the long term. I never did. Okay, so I'm not gonna change today. So I'm not gonna say 30 years, I'm sorry. I don't think that what we have did in the last 20 years dictates to a long term because of our ability to do what we are saving. And I just don't see it can happen. But I do like the 20, probably better than 15, that's a little risk, but the 20-year looks pretty good to me, but I'm a guy that I can pay off what you got and walk away, and from the time I've been on the board so far, I haven't seen I haven't seen we get a little pocket of money on the side, then everybody got their hands out. Then everybody telling us what everybody's supposed to get. It makes it right hard on us to have to make a decision based on prosperity that we can look as being a wealthy county of doing very well when everybody's causing us to spend the wealth off. So I do like short terms, if the ability to pay, but the 20-year it looks good to me. And that's me taking a little risk. I would go with 15, but 20-year looks, but at $60,000 you can invest a year, and we shouldn't blow that, because whenever we turn down, for instance, when I look at it, and I think, and most of them have heard me say this, I think budgets should be balanced. I think taxes go up because of mistakes and foolishness. See, so I'm thinking all of this in your loan. When you turn down a deal that brings revenue in versus a loan, and everybody, what Reggie talking about now? We turning down money that we can make to pay loans down that we can invest. Based on what reason? So when I said, I think it was the other girl, when I say I don't trust nobody, she said, what you say? Hey, just be honest. Be the best guy in the world. Just tell the truth. Because your trust can break your heart and your soul. So, and that don't mix with that, but I'm just saying that I do like the 20-year one. Last time we talked, maybe it was 3 or 4 years ago. And Davenport have led us in some good directions. And we picked up on some of them, so I do appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Happy to help.
You may want to elaborate a little bit about the discussions we had this morning on the Teams call. You were on that, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And we kind of massaged what we're talking about here a little bit this morning. Your strategy on how long you want to be out on it can change versus what you're faced with expense-wise to the county. Other projects that you're looking at, other projects you're currently involved with, and maybe just expand a little bit on that. Some of the concern this morning was the longer length of time versus the smaller amount for the monthly charge or yearly charge, however you want to look at it. In Middlesex case, with some of the other things we have projects that are going on, it would make the ability and having the opportunity to pay it down at some point, kind of put us in a little bit of a situation of thinking that the longer term could be maybe better for us. If we didn't have other projects that are sitting on the table that we're looking to do, that change might be something shorter to be able to do that.
Right.
Would you just
Sure.
elaborate a little bit on that?
It's a great, thank you. I think it boils down to flexibility. Is if you commit to a 15-year payback, right? You're increasing what the budget has to afford over the next 15 years. Versus if you pick something that's 30 years for a 30-year useful life asset, you can budget that into a cookie jar called a debt service fund or a capital reserve fund, such that you're putting away $110,000 each year. It's earning interest and being invested. And over the next 10 years, if you put all these on a level basis, you're going to have, we did the math this morning real quickly, it was another $1 million on top of the $1 million drop that you have in your debt profile by 2028, 2029 time period. And we've talked about this with staff, with the board before. Davenport is more than happy to work with you all to do that more multi-year level of planning over the time, so we can start to look at more of the projects coming down the pike and be able to slot some of this stuff in a little bit more strategically over time. So creating that flexibility, number one, by not overcommitting on your annual budget, what you're going to pay back on debt service is obviously helpful. Then when you get to a certain point, and let's say you've got a couple challenges this budget year, you got a little surplus this year, over time, you're going to be able to level out that sawtooth of challenges and positives over the next 10 years and see what you actually have at the time when this stuff is allowed to be prepaid. So that's number one. Number two is citizens living in the county today would be, potentially one perspective would be, they're not going to get the full benefit if they move within the next 10 or 15 years, because this is a 25 or 30-year asset. So the expectation would be that the citizens that live in the county over the next 30 years would have some level of commitment to keeping that asset going. If you truncate it into just 15 years, you're putting more of the burden, let's say, on the current citizenry. So that's another perspective, again, going back to the matching principle that the auditors adhere to when they're doing your audit. That's number two. And then number three is, again, trying to figure out, okay, how much interest expense are we going to have between a 15-year financing and a 30-year financing? And historically, right now, that difference between borrowing 15-year money and 30-year money has been upwards of 100 basis points. If you look at the numbers in here, we did the math on this earlier too. The 15-year interest rate versus the 30-year interest rate, that differentiation only costs you 65 basis points. So that's a really small historical level price for borrowing a little bit longer than 15 years. So 15 to 30, you're doubling your borrowing period, but you're only paying 65 basis points more. That's a positive from our perspective. Is that?
How much money is it different?
Sorry, I've got to slide my readers down. Again, if we're going to look at the entirety and assume this stays outstanding the whole period, 15 years versus 30 years.
I really was looking at 20 because evidently, I'm seeing it's a possibility going long term because of, I'm not going to read the long term, okay? For long term, for what we think. Because what we think that we can do. And I don't think, because we're going to have this extra money we're talking about, because if we don't have this extra money that we are talking about to invest, then all of a sudden we can't invest it. So, and that's based on our decision-making process. So we got to do a whole lot of things to say that we can make a less payment. Now we got other things that we can do. But guess what, when you start squeezing with all the other things that you can do? You don't have nothing left over. You can't invest. you can't build a scenario that you're talking about. It looks like the saving because of what it looks like. I mean, you do models, people do models all the time. One low flag flips it because we're talking too close. And I would say we're talking 60,000 between 30 years and 20 years, basically. I'm just looking at the bottom line.
Yes, sir.
300,000.
So if you
and-
allow
and-
me just a chance to play devil's advocate, and I don't have a dog in the fight. If you pick
Right.
15,
Go ahead and play
20,
devil's advocate.
just, so to your point, if you call it, there's, if you have space, we'll fill, right? So if you create that, if you pick 30 years and you have $110,000, your point is, you'll probably use it somewhere else and lose it. And we've already talked about that this morning, having a budget line item that sort of budgets what is the 15-year payment, but paying the 30 so we can start creating that. We establish a structured discipline over the next several years to get to what we want to do. The alternative, though, to your point, is if you pick the lesser term, like 15 or 20 years, and you budget at, you sort of max out your budget, you've got no flexibility, right? If you do have a challenging year, to your point, where's the money going to come from, right? So if you have to go out, like you said, something screws up, you got to go out to the public and raise taxes to cover that. So creating that flexibility would be helpful. Sorry.
No, you're good.
When you spend your money, you're gonna have to get the money back. And the only way you're gonna get it back is as soon as that you get it in. So now, we're gonna manage so well because we have the money. If we are well balanced, well, I guess you're a finance guy. I would say if I was well balanced in my checking account, based on the income I got, okay, then I wouldn't have to go to my savings account to pay a bill. Anytime that I gotta go somewhere else to get money to pay bills, I'm not balanced. To me, you're not balanced. But it is in a term, well, guess what? You got the money there to pay all the bills. Now we gotta create something that you tell me we got to create because this money is here based on a long term. I don't know if I'm saying it right, because I know we're looking at two different ways. I'm looking at the way just trying to keep it simple. And you're looking at the investment standpoint, and I understand both of them. What I'm saying
And
is
y'all are
that,
both dancing around my recommendation. I'm about to bust over here, but go ahead.
well, I don't know what your recommendation is. I hope it's a 20-year one. So if it's anything other than a 20-year one, and that's how I see it. Because even a recommendation, man, will come from a person that's making a recommendation based on some other numbers that you want to use. Mine is all simple. Mine is based on my tax base, okay? That's where my recommendation comes from. The possibility I have to increase taxes based on we'll need revenue to even do it long-term because we made a pocket that you said we got the money laying there like we already have it. What I'm saying, you pay your bills, you pay it down, 10 years, both of them the same. If you got enough extra money at 10 years, you go ahead and do it. If you can't, you can't. Because the payoff is going to be different at the end of 10 years on the 20-year versus the 30.
That's correct.
So the payoff is going to be different, but you still invested. So it's a lot of numbers here, and we can make them sound as good as we want them to make them sound. And I know, I don't know neither, but I'd like to keep it simple. And that's how I see it. Now, being honest about it is that, to me, is you got to do something a little different to make it work like what you're thinking about long-term, growing revenue, and you're paying less. I got you. I understand that. What I'm saying is that you can go as long as you want to. If you create debt, you're going to have to pay it, and even the money you make is going to cause people to increase in what they have to pay. Now, whether I made sense or not, maybe I called my sister this afternoon. She'd tell us, boys, these long-term loans, she'd tell you.
I don't want to stifle any discussion, but they are really dancing around all over. I mean, so 3 points. One, I think you're both right. I am going to recommend the 30 years, though, so you're not going to like me on this, Reggie, but I'm going to recommend the 30 years, and it's for reasons that y'all kind of hit around. Right now, we have $14 million invested at roughly 5.5%. we want to continue to invest those monies at a higher interest rate than we're paying on this loan. We have the ability to prepay in whole or in part after 10 years. My feeling is you lock that money in as long as you can. You have your lower payments on the front end, and we have been, second point, we've been exceptionally good at setting aside monies over years and set aside fund balances like our dredging fund. The dredging fund just didn't spontaneously exist. It was developed over time, and we've got we have $1 million in it now. If we invest that $100,000 every year for the first 10 years of that 30, I don't pay any attention to that bottom number because we may see it, we may never. But if we put that $100,000 into a separate set-aside fund balance like we did the dredging fund, we'll have that $1 million at the end of 10 years. And then y'all get to decide, hey, is the interest rate currently 5.5%, 6, 7%? Do we want to refinance? Do we want to pay it off? Or do we want to let it ride because we've got a lower interest rate than what's prevalent at the time? I don't know many people that are predicting lower interest rates. I don't think we're going to see 2% for quite some time. So the third point I would make is you keep your money working for you and invested for you. You take the longer term money and you don't worry about that $7.4 million at the bottom because in 10 years, you'll have $1 million set aside in a set aside fund balance that you can either pay it down, pay it off, refinance if the rates are lower. You have an out. So that's kind of my recommendation, the VRA at 30 years. It's a lower payment. It doesn't impact our budget as much next year. And we've proven that we can be fiscally disciplined by setting aside those monies every year to develop that dredging fund. We'll do the same for this. We'll call it the Sheriff's Office Sinking Fund or something. I don't know. Anne Marie's better with the finance terms than I am, but we'll come up with a good term, and you'll see it in every budget, in every work session, right there on the spreadsheet, showing that accumulating over time. I would rather use our own money, invest for the citizens of Middlesex than pay it to a bank. That's me. Now I don't have the bus.
Any other questions? Anne Marie, would you like to say something as the Chief Financial Officer for us?
I'm good. No, I'm good. I think that the choice of either a 25 or 30, I think that's where the discussion's been from the consultants, county administrator, has been 25 to 30 with the VRA. So that seems to be the direction that I would also recommend.
Okay, so we need to make a decision, though, whether you go in banks or, and the recommendation from you guys is the VRA.
VRA. I think that's where we landed as a group this
So
morning.
let's make it a little bit easy here before we get into the arm wrestling. Can we get a consensus on VRA versus the banks?
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to say, yeah, it makes sense, VRA, that makes sense, you know.
Okay.
And I also want to say 30 years, because I can see the math and how it works out, and
Okay.
and how you can invest your money versus $300,000 versus the, $200-some thousand, where you can set that extra $100,000 and invest it and let it grow. And, because that way it won't encumbrance your taxpayers as much for the 15-year or the 20-year. The longer you set aside, then you can adjust it, refinance it, check the rates, and like that. I mean, and most of the time, if you think about it, you look at inflation and different things like that going on, and we pay these guys to look at those things, and they're gonna market it and manage it and see it going up and down. And in 10 years, that's when you can do other things if you have to, right? I'm wrong.
No, you're absolutely
No, I mean that's what we pay you for. That's your job.
Yes, sir.
And in the longer, and you adjust and work those things. And the longer, your payments they're less, but you're investing, and then you can do other things, pay it off early, invest in other projects, But if you spend it all out 15 years, and you got other things going on, but you know everything's going up. And if you can get something at a low rate, invest it at a higher rate, only makes sense to me.
Yeah, I agree with Wayne. I think that a 30-year with VRA offers us financial flexibility, which I think is a really good thing when we have so many different interests and projects. It's good to be able to have that flexibility every year to deal with that money.
Okay,
Before you talk, Don, I got one more thing to say.
please.
It's pretty interesting how you heard two of our representatives here on the board say, you know, that we have some other projects to do. So we need to save money to do extra projects. Pretty interesting, right? Because what you were saying is, with the extra money, we'll be able to invest. So when we're talking out of one side of our mouth saying this, and out of other side of the mouth is saying that, that's what I'm saying. I say at the end of the day, you make your payment because it's gonna go back to the tax base, and we all just said that. We said it's identical. What we said was that we got other projects to do. We need our money in place now. So we're not gonna be able to save like what we think we're gonna save. Then it goes back to the tax base to pay it. End of the day, we're gonna have to raise it. Not saying it won't work, because we can put it aside and raise taxes. We can get a reassessment. It's the same thing. But so all I'm saying is that we picked the best loan that, I mean, to me, 20 years is not that bad. We're talking $50,000. You multiply that, it's gonna be cheaper in the long run, because if we got money to invest, we're gonna invest it anyway. But I done seen so far that when you see money sitting over there, guess what happened to it? Now, you weren't even on budget this year. Ain't no soul in the county that was ahead of anything this year that didn't come to ask for money. Okay, so what we thinking about is how we gonna set money aside without where we gonna get it from? It's just not gonna fall out of the sky. So I'm not saying your theory is right. The numbers will come out. It looks fine. I mean, you think about the water system, that looked the same way. All right? The model looked good. Fell off in the Atlantic Ocean somewhere. All right? So I'm not saying that what you're saying won't work. I believe it'll work. So you're not looking at somebody that don't believe it'll work. If you put the money aside and you invest, boy, that's pretty cool. You will grow and you continuously to grow. But we don't know the faith of the mind that a person can actually do what you need to do to accomplish the goal that they need. And that's my problem. I don't think that they can accomplish what they want to do based on what some things that happen and our attitudes about different things that goes on. I see that we better off to be in the middle of the road than to think we're safe sitting on the edge of the road because everything looks all right. And that's just the way I see it, man. But I'm fine. We can vote on it. VRS is the best one to give us the best chances. It's anybody can say that. But don't they tick around with me, but which rate and which loan is the best? Because sometimes our own personal life will decide on it. And I said this, the things that we do in life, the decisions that we make, we will judge them the same way, because all the time, longevity is not the best thing. With too much variables you put into it, it's the best sound mic, but it's not always the best thing. That's all I'm saying.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just one quick thing. We will build into the budget that $100,000 sinking fund this year. It's something that I would like to do, just to give you all the options in 10 years. And I kind of got an ace in my hole where I know where we're going to find that money. But I'm going to surprise you with that a little later, Reg.
Surprise me on that one, because I'll be waiting for it. I'll be looking for it. Surprise me on $100,000. We can get administration some raise.
Well, and if you do, and I get what you're talking about, but if you set what we're looking for payment for this at a higher level than what we actually have to pay, that builds in right there, right from the get-go, a margin of you being able to take that money and do something with it. And if we put it in a specific line item.
Exactly, set aside fund
it-
balance.
It's going to control it there as well.
That's right. And, well, we have the here comes the surprise, I can't wait. We have a surplus from the money that we had budgeted this year for the sheriff's office project, the 500,000. We've got it, after we make this payment to the contractor, we have $240,000 to start that set-aside fund balance off proper. We'll move that, carry that over from this year's budget into a set-aside fund balance for next year, similar to what we do with the dredging fund. And then you got $140,000 in it June 30th. Because it's money we haven't spent this year on the project. Now, we may spend some out of that on the project until we get our financing in place, but we're going to kickstart at $240,000 June 30th, if y'all will approve that. I was going to bring that up later, but I figured to segue right on into it. So see, I had an ace in the hole where we'll start that fund today.
I'll be watching because it seems like nobody else is just following you. Remember, a circle is completely round.
Yeah.
You know, what goes around, it got to come from somewhere. Everything goes around, got to come from somewhere.
Yeah. And the only other thing I'd say, Mr. Chairman, and I'm going to be quiet, and I know these rates aren't final, they won't lock in until July 23rd, but I'm still fairly pleased with these rates. I was expecting a lot higher. I don't think we're going to see rates this for very long, though. I think they're going up.
Okay. If there's no other discussion, a motion would be in order of some sort of.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we go ahead with the VRA for 30-year loan.
I'll second it.
Further discussion?
Do you need roll call?
Roll call, please.
Mr. Williams?
No.
Mr. Crittenden?
Yes.
Mr. Jesse?
Yes.
Mr. Don Harris?
Yes, motion is approved. Anything else you need from us today?
Yes, do they need the
Formally cover
resolution
that
or anything?
resolution in the-
We'll deal with the resolution and the form of the bond sale, and we'll get with you and that.
All right.
No, I mean, that's approved in what's in your packet, kind of, the option you guys approved all those documents.
Okay. Okay, is there any other action we need to take place? Anne Marie?
Well, while Davenport is here, did you want to address item I?
Yeah, while they're here, because they'll probably leave after this. And while you're looking at that, Mr. Chairman, I'll speak more to this $240,000 that we have in that capital program for the sheriff's office project. We're probably going to have that left over by the end of the month. I think it's $240,000 after we make the May payment to the contractor. So what I'm going to ask the board to do tonight, or at the July meeting, whichever you're more comfortable with, we'll have the absolute final number at the July meeting, is go ahead and carry those funds over into the 2026 fund balance as a set-aside fund balance for that project. Those monies would stay in that and start the sinking account, if we want to call it that we'll be adding to in 2026, 2027, 2028, until that 10-year period comes up, and then the board would have some options with probably over $1 million by the time 10 years rolls around. It's my hope that we'd never see that $7 million number at the bottom of the page. We'll take advantage of the lower rates, lower payments, but pay it off and be in a position to do so 10, 20 years, depending on what the board wants to do at the time. Because if the interest rates are hovering in the sevens, then, let's just say if they are, You may not want to refinance. You may just want to keep it for the life of the loan because you got a better rate than what you're getting on your investments. It's just a call you need to make when you have that opportunity. And did you have anything to add to that, Anne Marie? So if there's a consensus of the board, we'll roll that money over into that set-aside fund balance. That's all I need is a consensus, because it's fund balance.
Right, and it's
Just we're
current
setting
year.
it aside. Okay, all right.
Okay, and we're looking, what we're talking about is the Davenport contract.
It's in your packet on page 260.
Yeah, 260, 261 through 265, page-wise. And are you happy with the contract?
Yes. This afternoon, we are requesting that we approve a contract with Davenport and Company relating to providing financial advisory services. There is no fee assigned with this particular contract because the contract, the financial advisory services are paid as part of the closing costs from any debt proceeds when the debt is issued. The contract we are using, as you know, we were piggybacking last year, when we first did this, back in 2012, we piggybacked off, another county. And since then, we've decided to piggyback off the county of Bedford because it's the most recent contract that's been allowed, it's been leaded. So at this time, we ask that we be allowed to piggyback the contract with the town of Bedford and continue a contract with Davenport and Company.
County Administrator, are you happy with all that was just said?
I'm very happy. Davenport's been our financial advisor for a long time. They're one of the reasons we're in such a successful position with our fund balance, and I'm very pleased.
Okay, any specifics on the contract, Ms. Lewis, that we need to put in a motion?
No, sir, I've reviewed it. I had a little bit of feedback, which I've given to Anne Marie, and that was incorporated, so no, sir.
Then a motion would be in order to continue with Davenport as their financial advisors.
The motion, yes, sir, and to execute the contract with Davenport.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to execute the contract with Davenport for a service contract.
Second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Jesse, seconded by Mr. Crittenden. Any further discussion? Roll call, Ms. Hammond, please.
Mr. Crittenden,
Yes.
Mr. Jesse,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Don Harris.
Yes, motion's approved. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate this morning discussion and appreciate today.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask for your permission to address a couple of the county administrator's items now, because I do have to leave at 5.
Yes, sir. You have
Just a little bit of
the, you have the
leniency.
floor. Go ahead.
Thank you. First and foremost, I've been chatting with Dawn Moore with NAACP about Irene Morgan's monument out front. And it's coming up on the 80th year of that incident. And Dawn would like to try to do an event on July 20th, that's Saturday. It's a couple Saturdays before our event with Antioch. And called me, and we've been kind of noodling on it a little bit. She's working with the museums, and I think she's working with Bay Transit too, to see about getting an event planned for July 20th. And what I would like, we don't have a lot of information yet unless Dawn's gotten phone calls returned. Not yet. She's still working on that. But we don't have a lot of details on the event that they'd like to do, but they'd like to use courthouse grounds similar to what we're doing with Antioch, the parking lots and whatnot. And what we'll probably do is erect a couple of tents in the front yard. I'm planning to come in that Saturday to open up the building so the bathrooms are open for the event. And I even think Sheriff Bushy's involved in that a little bit, maybe.
Yes, we want him to play the sheriff.
Yeah, see, I want to be there to see that. So if the board would give us some leniency to use county grounds and open up that Saturday. I will be here and maybe erect a tent on the 20th. We'll have more information on the specifics of the event, but it's the 80th anniversary of that occurrence. And I think Don and NAACP want to do something special to mark that event and build some awareness. And
Is a motion needed for that, or is that,
to allow me to use county grounds and whatnot, yeah.
okay?
I'll make a motion to allow the county administrator to use the ground for the special Irene Morgan event.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? We'll look for more details later.
Yes, sir. And that's really the main thing I needed to talk to the board about today. I've got an update on forestry, but that can wait until July.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Crittenden,
Yes.
Mr. Jesse,
Yes?
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Don Harris.
Yes, motion's approved. Okay, let's make sure that I'm on, since we've, we've moved around some items a little bit. It appears that citizens' appointment would be next. Ms. Ricardi, are you ready for that?
I am.
Wonderful, take it over.
Okay, thank you. Every month, we provide to the board a list of applicants for boards and committees. This month, we have 6 applicants, 5 are reappointments, and 1 is new, plus Deidre Lunt, am I right? No, Davlin Gresham has requested to also be appointed to the Recreation Committee. So in summary, Greg Chambers is asking for a reappointment to the Middlesex Water Authority, as is James Reed. Davlin Gresham is to the CPMT, and that's a reappointment, as well as a new appointment to the Recreational Committee, as is Deidre Lund, wants to be appointed to the Recreation Committee. Fred Dolzell wants to be reappointed to Wetlands, and Carrie Dos Santos wants reappointment to the Broadband Authority. We thank them very much for their applications and ask for a board motion to consider filling those vacant positions.
And we can approve all of them at one time? So per read by Anne Marie, and it is on your agenda item, a motion would be in order.
All right, I'll make the motion that we approve all the reappointments for citizens.
Second.
Reappointments and the addition of new add-ons for the, particularly the, I guess, recreation, is that the only one? So that's the way your motion is? Okay. Mr. Jesse made the motion and Mr. Crittenden seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call, Ms. Hammond, please.
Mr. Jesse,
Yes?
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Crittenden,
Yes.
Mr. Don Harris.
Yes. Unanimous, motion carried. Okay, number 8, vacancies. Is that, are you prepared to talk about that, or
No,
are we
we're up
talking?
to C.
Pardon me?
Yeah, I don't have anything on the vacancies.
Just real quick on the
Okay.
vacancies, that's more a reminder for the board. That's
Yes.
where we need people.
Right,
So, yep,
okay.
we have 1 at-large social services advisory board rep needed.
All right, sounds good. Moving on. Grant budget acceptance and appropriation.
Me? All right. Middlesex County received 15, through the Historic Courthouse Committee from the Master Gardeners, received a $1,500 contribution to provide courthouse grounds and plantings, that is, a redesign of the courthouse grounds and plantings out there. We received the monies several weeks ago. They've been deposited, but before we could spend them, we needed to have the board's authority to accept the grant, number 1, and to appropriate the funds. So what I'm asking right now is the board consider accepting and appropriating a $1,500 grant from the Master Gardeners for plantings at the historic courthouse. Attached with the packet, on your page 83, is the grant that was submitted by Sarah Susan Marie Rhodes of the Garden Club of Middle Peninsula. So that's what she plans to do. And then on page 84 is a diagram of what they plan to do with the site itself. So that's all we need is a motion.
For the request of 2024-26. Is there anything additional?
That's it. Well, that's it. If you approve that, that's good.
Okay. We need a motion.
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Williams,
Second.
second by Mr. Crittenden. Any further discussion? And so the courthouse committee, that's where all of this is being generated from the participants on that committee of where we want to go with making the outdoors look as favorable as we can. We've already approved the downstairs casing that hasn't been completed yet for some additional publication of people and things that have gone on in the county. So it's kind of in conjunction with that, what we have. Anything else? Roll call, please.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Crittenden?
Yes.
Mr. Jesse?
Yes.
Mr. Don Harris?
Yes. So motion for approval of 2024-26 has been approved. All righty. I guess we're at E, correct? D. Sorry, D. 2024 Budget Appropriation Resolution, page 86 to 90.
I'll let you do that if you'd like.
So this appropriates your fiscal year 2025 budget that we just completed. The governor and General Assembly finally came to some terms and approved their budget on the 15th. And this appropriations resolution appropriates what y'all voted on. Now, one key difference that I'll give voice to, and Emery can chime in, we had, until the state finally adopted the 3% COLA, we had the 3% COLA money in our budget at the budget public hearing in the contingency account, with the idea that we would appropriate it if the state pulled through and actually did what they said they were going to do, which they did. So the appropriation resolution that y'all have in front of you has those monies reallocated among the departments to reflect the 3% COLA. And if you have any questions, we're here to answer.
Any questions? Okay, I don't see a number on this resolution. I guess we don't need it. It would fall under the budget.
Its name, which is the Budget Appropriation Resolution.
Okay.
It's the appropriation of appropriation.
Correct. A motion be in order to accept that, and
I so move.
so move Mr. Jesse on the resolution.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Crittenden. No discussion. Roll call, Ms. Hammond, please.
Mr. Crittenden?
Yes.
Mr. Jesse?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Don Harris?
Yes, motion's approved. Okay, I think we're now down to item E, is that correct? Mr. Walker, would you take over,
I'll
please?
be happy to kick that one off.
Thank you.
So several months ago, well, not several months ago, several weeks ago, I should say, when the bids came in for Hampton Road Sanitation District Sewer Project, I had a conversation with some of the staff at Hampton Roads. Their engineer's estimate was $45 million. The lowest bid came at $6 million. And I think Hampton Road Sanitation District is still reviewing how they're going to respond to that. I recommended to John Dano with HRSD during our telephone conversation that they ought to consider breaking the project up into smaller component parts to allow for smaller contractors to potentially bid it and not need such a high bid bond amount to be able to cover, such a large project. And consider rebidding when the federal money that's being poured into infrastructure, specifically water and sewer projects, has time to kind of exercise itself from the queue, if you will. The amount of federal money that is on the streets now from ARPA and some of the relief programs pretty much flooded the capacity of the contractors to be able to do the work. So what we're seeing is somewhat inordinate pricing for bids, as is reflected in the HRSD bid, and in reference to some of the discussions we've had in budget work sessions. It's not a very good bidding environment for certain types of projects, not least of which is water and sewer. So that was part of my recommendation to the staff at HRSD, that maybe they ought to think about that in terms of pausing, letting that money clear the system, and hopefully rebid the project in 3 to 5 years when a better bidding environment occurs. I think they took that under advisement because I saw that in the front page of the paper as being kind of the staff's position, it seems, with their commission. Now, their commission meets in June, so they're probably going to make a decision at that meeting. I can't see them postponing it because it got so long for the bids to be good. I don't foresee them approving the low bid or the low bid of $81.6 million. I haven't heard anything suggesting they would, but I think it's appropriate, since the county is their partner on a portion of that project, specifically the Saluda lift stations and the Hartfield lift stations, that the county have a recommendation to their commission to go in parallel and alongside their staffs, because our money's involved too. And you'll notice in the memo in the packet how much over the lift stations were in the bid. It's substantial. So, we are committed to cost share that project, and therefore we are a partner with them. And I'm happy to say that they want the board's recommendation, the county's recommendation. They've already had mine unofficially, but I think it would be stronger and more profound if the county board had one and we could put it in a letter. I made my recommendation clear. It's similar to what I've been saying. We can dance with the words a little bit on that if you'd care to, but I would like the board to consider making a recommendation to the commission and us being able to get that letter to them this week so it goes out in their packet for their June, I think, 20th commission meeting.
And they came to us being that we're a partner with them.
Absolutely, yeah.
And, said what they see the environment is, and they wanted to pause.
I think the staff does. The commission hasn't weighed in yet.
We'll see
that
what
I'm
goes
aware
on
of.
ahead.
Right.
And we're in agreement with that process to pause the whole project.
Yep. I think pausing the project for what I think, personally, I think it would need to be 3 to 5 years, not 1 or 2, because contractors are going to be just as busy next summer as they are this summer with these infrastructure projects. It's going to take 2 years minimum for some of that glut to clear the system and allow for, I think, a better bidding environment to exist. The other factor involved in this is labor. If you're a track-hoe operator or any kind of equipment operator, you're making good money these days, and they need more of them. So I think I'll go to Career Day and say, don't do what I did, kids. Be an equipment operator. And they need you. The world needs you now. So in any event.
Well, and for the public as well, it gives us a chance. If they don't want to pause the project, we may force that issue. at this point, at the levels of what has come in price-wise?
At the levels of what's come in price-wise, I think a lot needs to be considered on that.
And we are currently, just for the public, we are considering all kinds of options right now as it pertains to sewer.
That's correct. The first and foremost is to pause and reflect on some things. And
Correct.
wait for a better bidding environment. I would hope, sir. And that's my recommendation.
Yes. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I would just like to say, a little history on this, because I've been on dealing with this for a long time. But just think about it. If Hampton Sanitation didn't take over the Banner plant and also the jail, right?
That's right.
We really wouldn't be talking about this going on, because they got to take those effluents to Matthews to connect and to go all the way down Yorktown and go head on. And really, you think about it, one time we was talking about a little package all over the county in different areas. But right now, they got to get the effluents out the creek. So really, right now, the things that we were doing was in the process of what Hampton Sanitation was going to do because of the plant that they had in Alabama.
That's right.
And because really, back before all this started, when we were thinking about things back in the day, we looked at it and had engineers and looked at it, we couldn't afford it. But now that, hey, Hampton Sanitation got these plants, they got to take it down to Yorktown right now. So then, we're responsible for some of the collection where we get economic development and things like that. So, I'm just giving you a little bit of history of a lot of people that don't know a lot of history of how this came about. And because I know it's a lot of up and downs, and then the economy hit, and then, and just a little history. So, I'm just trying to say, as you be on here, you may think we mismanaging money and doing things wrong. No, we're not. It's the environment that you have. You have changed the board of supervisors. You have changed the directions, and a lot of things going on. Because one time we was going to put a waste treatment plant right back over here that the Atlanta board had one time, and change the board. That didn't happen. But we're getting some economic development, and you got Tractor Supply coming here. But all this going to be connected right here in the Saluda area in Coos Corner, because one time you was going to have that pub?
Yeah, the brew pub.
Brew pub. We're going to have that one time. Works for housing. All that's still going to come, but the connection is still going to be here because now you got it in place. So when they decide to move it, right now it's in place right now. So and then when the environment get right, then it's going to move along a little bit more. So I just want to, just kind of relay that to people that didn't even remember a lot of things that going on, because I've been here a while and I've seen a lot of things going up and down, and nothing's perfect. I can tell you might have said we waste money, but if you don't take that step out there to get economic development here, you're not going to do anything. And if you don't do anything, taxes are going to go up. Taxes are always going to go up. So as we get this sewer in the Saluda area and all those areas, now you get your motels, you get other things that help offset tax base.
Things that other communities around us are getting because they had the infrastructure
Yeah,
in place.
and that's true, because if you look at it, Gloucester's booming, Essex booming, and people coming this way. It's just that we as supervisors going to have to make sure we manage properly and get things done. Because I can see Gloucester, they're booming, but their taxes are high too, and they got a lot of other things to do. They got a lot more going on there, but we're going to get there managed as how we manage our county. And it is not easy. I'm going to just tell you, not easy.
And if I can expand, I think everything Wayne just said is spot on. Just to expand a little bit from HRSD's point of view, Wayne's 100% correct. When we started talking about sewer, we were looking at distributive wastewater treatment plants that put the effluent underground and discharged it in basically mass drain fields that would keep it out of the creeks. It would just soak into the ground. Ted Hennepin, who was with HRSD as their executive director, kind of showed us a different way of looking at it. He said, from your point of view, that makes sense, but from my point of view, I don't want to have to staff and manage all those different treatment plants all over God's green earth. When I have a state-of-the-art treatment plant in York County that literally treats water you can drink. It's cheaper. Well, you may not want to drink it, but it's treated to that level because there are plans to pipe it into the aquifer and help offset the groundwater withdrawal rates. We won't get off on that tangent, but when he had to show me on Google Earth, and he said, you're looking at Middlesex, and you should, because that's your focus. But if you zoom out a little bit more and you see how close that York treatment plant is to Middlesex, it's not that far for me to force main all of that effluent down there, close an old treatment plant in Urbana that needs to be closed, or expensive retrogrades need to be made on that, and close the Saluda plant and just pump it all to the state-of-the-art plant where they need the flow, or they have the capacity, I guess is better said. So it just made sense. 5 years ago, it wouldn't have been $81.6 million either. I've got to go, but that's a good way to leave. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you, Wayne, for that. And I'll sum that up just a little bit. Yes, things change, timings change, interest changes, effectiveness of the program changes, and we are trying to be progressively thinking under cost considerations. And that's what's going on with HRSD wanting to slow the project down a little bit, which I'm in agreement as well. All right, moving right along, let's go to,
Mr. Chairman, that requires a motion.
oh, did we not do a motion?
No, sir, I don't believe so.
All right, help me with the motion.
Well, you have on page 91.
The motion, I think, is to send a response to HRSD that we're in favor of their suggestion of slowing the project down. Is that correct?
Well, yes, I mean, you could say it a different way, is that it would be a motion to adopt the county administrator's recommendation as outlined on page 91, and that could be conveyed in a letter to HRSD. Mr. Walker's recommendation was to recommend to HRSD that they divide the project into smaller component parts to allow smaller contractors more opportunities to bid on the project and rebid in 2 to 5 years when most of the federal spending has been exercised from the queue and when contractors have more capacity to construct the project and in a better bidding environment.
I so move.
So moved by Mr. Jesse,
Second.
second by Mr. Crittenden, and Mr. Walker had stated we're going to clean up the verbiage a little bit of what we send to them. But
Yes.
moving along, any other discussion? Ms. Hammond, would you be so kind?
Mr. Crittenden,
Yes.
Mr. Jesse,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Don Harris.
Yes, motion is approved. Okay, moving right along, if I'm correct on my agenda items, I think we have, he's already there.
There you go.
Uh,
Don't want to delay a game.
Trent Funkhauser to talk a little bit. Go ahead.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yes, sir.
Apologies, I handed out a memo earlier before the meeting started and spoke with each of y'all briefly. Didn't quite have something ready when it was agenda publication time, so I apologize for that again. The Board of Supervisors, in accordance with the purchasing policy, is required to approve anything, I believe, over $10,000, and this purchase order is for $15,000 to do some web page redesign. It's in accordance with the ARPA plan that y'all previously approved. The money's appropriated, it's existing from the state, it's in our bank account. So I'm just requesting approval of selecting Virginia River Realm over the other folks that we talked to in terms of requests for quotes. We had some people that just couldn't do it, and then some people were a little bit high.
All right, motion would be in order to approve that.
I so move.
So moved by Mr. Jesse,
Second.
second by Mr. Williams. It's something for sure that is just going to continue to push us in the direction and the ability for tourism for the county.
We're getting towards the end of this project, and we should have some good product out of it. The Visit Widget stuff is already active. This will help us, finish up the web pages.
Y'all are doing a great job, and we appreciate what you're doing, for sure.
Thank you all very much.
Any other discussion? Motion's been made, right? And roll call, please.
Mr. Jesse,
Yes.
Mr. Williams. Yes. Mr. Crittenden,
Yes.
Mr. Don Harris.
Yes, motion's approved. Thank you,
again.
sir.
Thank you all.
Okay, moving right along. Item number 6, administrative updates. Looks like, Anne Marie, you may be on, looks like most of them are reports, correct? Forest management plan will probably get pushed to the next meeting. ERP financial software update,
That would be me.
that would be you.
Thank you. The budget asked for an update on the county's financial software / enterprise resource planning, ERP, software upgrade. And at this time, first of all, I met with, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, I met with the treasurer and the commissioner of revenue and the IT director. And as we had previously indicated to the board, we need guidance as we go through this process. We do not have the expertise to coordinate all those pieces into one enterprise resource planning software. So before we move forward, we want to obtain a consultant to steer the process. I have written an RFP, which I was reading it just now, and I realize it's probably way more than what I need, so I'm going to start cutting it out. But I am ready to go if the board agrees to allowing us, and again, this doesn't authorize funding or anything. This just says, Anne Marie, go out for RFP and let's see what we come back with to get a facilitator / consultant that could help us through the next few steps of the process, which would be identifying the need. We know the need, but identifying the need such that we can put it in an RFP, writing an RFP, and then after the RFP is approved and to get the proper software that meets our needs, then the final step is holding our hand while we go through the final transitions to the new softwares. So that's what we're looking for. Obviously, it depends on how, again, as I was reading mine, I thought I really don't need to rely on somebody else for some of these, so we'll cut out some of those programs. But in the long run, I think that's going to be our first step in obtaining a enterprise resource software. And at this point, I guess all I really want is consent to continue with the process as described.
Is that necessary for us to have a motion on that, or just consent from the
No.
members? I think the consent has already been there to move forward with that, correct?
You are sort of correct. I just wanted to make sure we were all on the same page that I was going to go out for RFP for a consultant on this first. Oh, yeah, yes.
Okay, so is everybody in agreement to continue to move forward with that project? Okay, you have your consent. Okay. All right, anything else under Anne Marie, under staff reports, since Matt's not here?
Nothing.
Okay, we good? All right, my favorite time, county attorney update.
No, sir, nothing in addition outside of my staff report.
Okay, wonderful. All right, unfinished or new business. Is there any unfinished business that we need to talk about? I'm not sure I know of any. Any new business? We got a lot of business going on, so it's nice we don't have any more new business. Matters presented by the board, and we'll start at your end, Wayne, if we could.
Well, I have, the Austria Festival Foundation, I got a couple other meetings coming up in a couple of days. I did go to the planning commission meeting, and we just, general business, a lot of stuff was going on. But that's all I have right now.
Thank you. Mr. Crittenden?
Well, just to report, I had a meeting with Mr. Lehman, our emergency services, and about seeing what the county can do to assist the rescue squads in handling their their call load and perhaps increasing their participation.
Wonderful, thank you. Mr. Williams, anything to report?
No, I really don't have anything at this time. I done ran out this afternoon on this loan, so I ain't got nothing else, really. I ran out on that, but I would like to say that I feel that some of the things that we've been looking at and some of the ways that we have did things in the past, and we gonna have to be able to accept some changes. I noticed that Mr. Powell, for instance, he pulled back what he wanted to do with manufactured homes. I would hope that the Planning Commission and everybody else can get behind projects and don't use technicalities. We talk about, and this is just my opinion, manufactured homes in a residential district, and we talk about, the comprehension plan. And what I'm saying is that we have to look at things very carefully, because I feel that everything is done for a reasoning. And once you pass something, it's law. Just like the Board of Supervisors, if we pass something and put it in progress, it's the law. It's written in the books. It'll be law. And some businesses wanted to come to the county, and we just throw the revenue away, understanding that as taxpayers, we don't decide who come or who want to come. They got to do their research and things like that, and that's how they come. It's not, we just got to make a decision based on a fit. Because I'm going to just look at zoning, for instance. And if you look in the Webster Dictionary, the book that we look at all the time, you look up zoning. And zoning is simple. It's a fit. We could call low density. We could talk residential. We could call land usage. We can call it all of these things, but it's just a fit into a situation and a place in a county. And we have to decide as supervisors whether it fit or not. These things are not complicated. It's whether it fit, and everything is done for a reason. And that's how I look at it. I mean, this thing, and I go around and look at a lot of different things, and that's just one thing that touched me. No individual will change my mind too much about something that is right. I believe excellence is a standard. I don't believe it's something that we just should take it for granted. We are not perfect, because there's only one that was perfect. But in saying that, we got to look at things, because I think Mill Six is going to be, a great place to live. And we got to do that together. And our decision-making process is going to have to be that, because we just can't think this will work. Then we say, like my buddy Jesse would say, he said, man, we done made the best decision for the time. I said, a good decision is always good. A bad one, you can't fix it. But if you do something that is good, it'll never leave you. That's like I'm saying, a good name will follow you to the day you leave the earth. A bad name would do the same thing. So it's not much of, man, I done lost more time on this job than I worked at 40-some years at work. But I do pride in myself on my ability to do something. And I don't take what I got to do lightly. And I say things, and my wife get at me all the time, say, why don't you come directly when you want to say something? I said, because I'm not directly. I said, because I think if a person really listened, they would understand what you're saying. My grandfather said one time, because me and him used to talk, John Abbott King. King used to own all of their own King Neck at Christ Church. Family, all over, they owned it all. I don't know where is it at now, but he said that, you'll learn how to listen And remember, it's not always what a person is saying, and it's not what you are hearing. When you grow up one day, you would find out that people tell you things, and they really don't know that they told you. And you would look at them and say, oh, I got you. And these days, it do make a difference. Because sometimes what a person say, you get angry. You say things that you don't mean. Later you come back and you can be sincere. But I understand what listening is now. You know, I understand, you know, that so I'm looking and smiling and laughing, and I'm trying to get you to say something. I'm just waiting for you to say something you try not to say. And I hear what you're saying, and I feel it on the inside when I say it. It's a good feeling. But I'm not going to waste all y'all time here talking about that. But I'm just going to say one thing. A guy named Paul Guthrie was at work, and he told me, he said, Reggie, he said, can't nobody in the mill make a better decision than I can if I got all the facts. I said, you know something? Both of us think the same thing. I said, but you remember one thing. I'm running the show. I got advantage on you, so you never going to have all the information. But as supervisors, we do need all the information so we can make a decision, disagree or not, that we can be humble because it's not about us. It's about the county.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your comments. I just have a couple. And, you know, just to piggyback on that a little bit, we've made it pretty clear, I think, over the last year, maybe two, that we want to have all the information that's available out there for us to make a decision. And I think we've pressed that pretty well. We're probably not exactly where we need to go, but we're starting to get the wheels rolling a little bit on that. Some of the things, we had the board retreat. I thought that was a great opportunity for us to kind of see how everybody was lining up on certain things, and we talked about, you know, a variety of items in that. You have, which Matt was going to discuss probably at the next meeting, we've taken the time to, all of us, to look at the properties that are available in Middlesex County and what we may or may not want to do with those. So we're actively looking at that for either development or sale or a number of other things with that. So I feel really good about that. Met with Matt and I went to the Region 2 VACO meeting, and that was a good meeting. It gives us an opportunity to see what some other counties are having issues with, and to rub elbows with somebody else that you might want to call them offline and say, hey, we got this, or you guys are dealing with this, and how are you handling it? So that was a good meeting down in Williamsburg. I also attended the PDC meeting in Warsaw. That was and I was glad that I went. The EDA had some conflicts with the time and date, and I agreed to go down and represent Middlesex County with that. It was nice to see and meet some people that I didn't necessarily know. So hopefully that helps us somewhere in the big picture. I personally have met with, I think some of y'all have, with Mr. Powell to see, you know, what the next steps may or may not be with that process. And lastly, but not leastly, the high school renovation committee continues to meet and discuss what the options are out there for the potential renovation of the high school and/or what the timing may be on that. And I'll just leave it at that. That's actively and going on. Wayne sits on that with me too, and so we're looking at a lot of options of what may be possible with that project. So that's moving along well. So with that, I will say we're finished with matters presented by the board, and I will open the floor for any public comment. Seeing none, we'll close the public comment section, and we will move to closed session, and we need a motion to move to that.
Yes. Mr. Flynn, do you anticipate us taking action afterwards, or that's unknown? Probably not. Okay. Okay. Well, then, with that, we'll go downstairs for the closed session in the Planning and Zoning Conference Room in case we do take action, so we don't have to ask the public to leave unless we need the screen. So, Mr. Chairman, we need a motion to convene in closed session pursuant to Virginia Code Sections 2.2-3711A8 and A29. This will be for the discussion of an award of a public contract regarding the Hummel Field Airport, which involves the expenditure of public funds, and will include the discussions of the terms or scopes of such contract, and where discussion in open session would adversely affect the bargaining position and/or negotiating strategy of the board, and for the purpose of consulting with legal counsel regarding specific legal questions about the contract, its negotiations, the procedures, and the processes related thereto.
So move.
Second.
Motion to go into closed session by Mr. Jesse and second by Mr. Crittenden. Roll call, please.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Crittenden?
Yes.
Mr. Jesse?
Yes.
Mr. Don Harris?
Yes, motion's approved, and we will reconvene at 7 PM. Correct?